Hello and welcome. I'm Watson Williams, and you're watching Cryptic Creations, where we bring you the not-so-obvious. And today we're going to talk about my UFO experiences, because I wanted to give a overview of what I mean whenever I refer to the sightings that I've had. So this video is your reference for summarizing the experiences that I've had to date. So, the first encounter that I ever had with UFOs, which I have referenced before in my Black Cube video, I referred to the night of the probes, but I haven't yet explained it. This is that event. I was with two other people, and I'm just gonna completely condense everything so I can get to everything that I need to talk about. Basically, I was with two other people, and we saw a orange light above some power lines, and it came down out of the sky and started coming towards us after we both agreed that it was moving. We saw it coming towards us like this, and as it got closer, we could see that it had two headlights on the front of it, and it was a little black bodied craft with white glowing eyes on the front of it, and it was giving out light, like a rainbow of light was coming out the back of it as exhaust. It was very interesting, and we watched it, and it dips down below the tree line, and we turn around, and there's either the same one or this. At the time, I actually even thought that it could have been the same one. We chased it, and I fell down. My friend helped me back up, and he said, "We have to keep going. We got to keep chasing this thing." And I said, "No, we've made our move. Now it's time for them to make theirs." And as soon as I said that, the second one came. This one came down out of the sky. It crossed over the road, and we were behind some trailers in a power line right of way. And so it dipped down really low to the ground. This thing was 3, 4, 5 feet off the ground at times, and it was it was snaking back and forth. It would pass one power line, and then would come over past the next power line, and then whenever there weren't any power lines in between us, it went up, and we could see it was a full moon. And it was domed over. It was aerodynamic, flat on the back, flat on the bottom, and it looked like a Pac-Man. This thing, we saw floating Pac-Man, and they well, the second one, it went back up into the sky, and it crossed over the right of way, and it stopped, and it met up with two other ones. And they locked into the shape of best I could estimate was an equilateral triangle, but it was like a triangular shape, and they kept that shape, and they moved together. We watched a seamless craft that was 3 feet off the ground, and then it went up and buzzed us, and then met up with the other two, and then they moved together in the shape of a triangle, and then a few minutes later, Summer came down because she was only watching from the trailer. She was too afraid to come down for a while, and she was on the phone with somebody. And she came down after me and my other friend saw this, and then but right before she came down, I was standing there by myself, and I saw a disc in the distance for a brief moment, and I just remember seeing a disc-shaped object with lights, different colored lights. They weren't light bulb lights, but it was the whole thing was glowing and changing colors and shit. And I think I blinked and it disappeared. But regardless, that's essentially the night of the probes. After the triangle went across, this other one came back and then arced up and stopped, and that's whenever I knew that they pretend to be stars, a lot of them, And so ever since then, I've always like been suspicious of like the brightest stars in the sky. Like even because you can stand in front of Venus, or you could be like a craft that's in the line of sight of somebody, and like it's convenient covered. I mean, it's a really interesting little maneuver, but they do this. And like, okay, so that's none of the probes, and then the black cube, which I made a video about already. But basically, it was the first day that I came to this house, the very first day, and I walked in the backyard and I saw a black cube, and it just moved away from my line of sight until it was too small to see, and like literally just was gone. And it was slow and deliberate, like it wasn't a fast motion, but I noticed it in like for about 5 seconds it wasn't moving, maybe 5-10 seconds, and then it just went away. For details, you can watch the video on that sighting. And then I've seen I haven't talked about this one yet. I call this like the Millennium Falcon because it sort of looked like a reverse engineered it was a reproduction type vehicle, I think, because it just looked so clunky. It didn't look like sleek or streamlined. And what happened was one day in the city, like I was driving out to the country to see my dad, and I come around the bend, and there's a disc-shaped object, like roughly speaking, like because the Millennium Falcon is basically a disc, but it's like an ugly disc. It's not like, but there's like, for lack of a better word, there's like a disc hovering over this like maintenance facility, like I think it's a pumping facility that gets gas. It's like a gas line maintenance facility or something for the pipes that are running along the road. And it was a newly built facility. And so whoever was checking it out, they hadn't noticed it before then, I don't think, because they were just coming down to check it out. And so they checked it out, or they were checking it out, and then, I come around the bend and I see it above the facility. That at this time the facility was new and it didn't have barbed wire fence around it. Like it has a really substantial like privacy fence around it now, but back in the day it did not. And I come up beside it and I park my car, and it's still there. And I get out of my car and I'm basically standing in the middle of the road, and I'm looking at this thing, like it's across the street, so it's only like 100 feet away and like 50 feet up in the air. And I'm just like, what the fuck? If I walk across the street, I might actually get abducted. Like, do I want to walk across the street? And like, I wanted to, and I was about to like go forward, and a car just boom comes zooming past me, and as soon as that car went past me, the object, whoosh, it took off over the pine trees. It just went straight sideways at first. Like, it didn't take any upward motion at all. It just went it just started going. It wasn't fast. Like it took off like a car would take off. Like, it was just kind of slow, but a flying car or whatever. But it so I got back in my car, and I could see it through my dash window, and it was like this, like in real time. It went like this, like the apparent size was just like, so it was gone really pretty quick. But that wasn't the end of it, because like a minute, not 2 minutes later, like 2 minutes at the most, but I was, because I probably wasn't driving very fast at that point after seeing that, but I was continuing on out towards the country, and then there it was going back the other direction, right in front of this mansion that has a lake in front of it. And I just remember, like, I was coming up on the mansion, and just as I got in line with the lake, or the pond and the mansion here, and there's this damn thing going back the other direction, And it was weird because, like I said, this object was very non-linear looking, and I want to say that like maybe there was a hatch open whenever it went back the other way, but I can't really be sure. Um, that's the Millennium Falcon sighting, and then I was alone for that. Then we had all right, so this time, now I'm going to talk about the cloaked sphere. Like we saw a sphere of light that disappeared. It was about 12 feet in diameter, but before we saw it, and the people that saw it was me and my brother and our friend, who was at the time he wasn't our brother-in-law, but he became our brother-in-law. But so it was us, and it was a full moon again, and we had the satellite out, and we were trying to the telescope, and we were trying to look at the moon. And so I see a little point of light traveling across the sky, and just like directional orientation isn't necessarily all that important. But it's like if I'm standing there and I look up and I see it, I've got the airport over here, and it was moving towards the airport, and then two planes were coming like so, and I shit you not, this little like grayish, silvery, like faint point of light in the sky that I was just assuming whatever. Like, I mean, it was either a UFO or a satellite, but it stopped moving whenever the planes came into the general airspace. Okay? And I'm looking at the planes, and I go to look back, and it wasn't there. Like, I couldn't see it. I couldn't find it anymore. It was such a tiny little light, and I assumed that I couldn't see it because my eyes just couldn't find it anymore. But then, like 2 minutes later, after I saw that, a little pinpoint of light, and then it stopped after planes were like coming into the airspace that it was already in, and then I lost it. And then like 2 minutes later, me and my brother and our friend, we saw a light come on in the sky, and it was right down over over our house, over what we call the farm, and it just, I remember it sort of like arcing down and then resting, and this was maybe like 200 feet away, but only like 30, I would say it came to maybe like 35 feet off of the ground or so, but it was like a 12-foot sphere of either a solid object that was glowing or just a sphere of light, which whatever that is, like even higher being. But I tend to think that it was like just an advanced craft from another world, or other civilizations, hyperdimensional, whatever. I really don't think this was ours, but I remember seeing like a halocline, or like a distortion wave, go across it from my left to right, and it just disappeared, and you could see like a freaking halocline in the air where it was for like a second or two, and then it was just gone. But we all saw it, but they didn't see, I pinged it or whatever, and like it read my consciousness and was like, oh, he's one of he's one of ours, and they came down and like had some fun with us. And then like I didn't see anything for years until 2016 in December, right around Christmas time. It was like 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas, and I saw something that looked like R2-D2, like a black R2-D2 object. So it was like, like a trash can rounded off at the top, and like cylinder rounded off at the top, and it was like a gyroscope whirligig thing, because it took off out of the yard of somebody's yard. Like I was at work. I had just taken a pizza delivery. I mean, you can check out the details of this video, so I'm just like trying to summarize everything together. But like it took off out of the yard, and like it stopped over the road, and it shifted gears, and sparks flew out the bottom of it, and it maneuvered right through some live power lines, across somebody else's yard, up into the sky, and then it